So the questions we've just considered involve knowing what information the strategy team needs to know about the business so that it can formulate effective strategy, and what does the business need to know from the strategy team so that it can deliver effective strategy. We position the business integrated governance model as the vehicle with which we can share and communicate information around decision making, not just on the interface between strategy and delivery, but on all points of accountability and their interfaces to and from their customers and their suppliers, internally or externally. Briefly, the business integrated governance model is a model that explains how to connect strategic drivers, the BAU organization, those that are focusing on managing products and implementing change. It enables information-centric decisions across the enterprise, enabling clear accountability. It's been created by the Core P3M Data Club, a voluntary community interest company, and embedded in the Praxis framework for good practice. There's a link to the YouTube video which describes it a bit more richly, and if you search for Core P3M Data Club in YouTube, you'll find that set of videos too. Today, we're going to focus on aspects of the big model. We're not going to dwell on it or delve into it end to end. And the first part we're going to look at is how it supports strategy formulation, or in fact, the whole strategic process. And as we've heard from Lucy and Patrick, strategy is not a one-off fire and forget. It's a continuous process. We have to keep listening and adjusting and taking our world and our circumstances into account. So the picture we've pulled together to express that in the big model is one of an organization that's listening to the external environment, that's listening to its customers, its regulatory environment, its suppliers, all those sources of information through non-execs, executives, staff members, whoever they are, and that we make efforts to pull that together and describe them as opportunities, threats, imperatives and goals that we can assign a priority to, we can assign ownership of, such that we can evaluate them effectively and allow their influences to affect our future strategy, our future plan, our future decision process, our vision of how we're going to get to our next end game. And the idea is that out of that strategy, however we've formulated it, and we've seen patterns of strategy as a vehicle to help us put that together, however we compile that, we need then to communicate that to our business. And we can do that in the big framework using the language of objective, target and challenge. Objective we give to change, target we give to business as usual, and challenge we give to innovation, perhaps even the product community, to develop and current and future versions of value streams that our business is all about. So then this enables us to have an environment-based, a risk-based strategy, a systematic strategy that's put together using a sensible approach to doing that. It is a balanced strategy where we're deploying resources, leadership and funding between the different aspects to our business, including change, value streams and business as usual. And to have a reality-based strategy, because out of performance of our business, we'll understand emergent risks and changes to strengths and weaknesses that will then affect the opportunities, threats, imperatives and goals that we face as a business. And this final aspect answers question 1 of the challenges we set in the workshop. With respect to the second question, how do people involved in execution get to know about the strategy? The caricature is that our strategic leadership teams hand over what they expect to be done and then sit back and expect or see that a miracle has to happen for that strategy to be delivered. Well, if we are clear on the objectives, targets and challenges we set, and we're clear on the priorities that we give across the business for use of leadership, funds and resources, then perhaps we'll have a greater chance of strategic expectations being realised in the context of current performance needs and constraints that we face as a business. But it must be clear to all of us that strategy isn't the only thing that we're dealing with. Yes, we have to change the business. We have to advance and progress towards our goals through a strategy. But we also have to run the business. We have to perform for now. We have to extract performance and value at this moment, not just at future moments to come. So we have at least three work streams that we alluded to in the last slide that are ongoing. A transformation portfolio, where perhaps we aggregate all the high-level strategic intent. We may, of course, distribute that through business units, but we might pull it together through a central portfolio to focus us on objectives. We have value streams, where we're developing products, new products, existing products, selling products, getting value from products. And we have operations and our regulatory portfolio, the business units that keep the lights on, that are business support functions that enable the value streams to deliver value, and I guess are the things that sponsor or are the subjects of the transformation portfolio. And our objectives and challenges, those strategic steps that we talked about in the last slide, that those will come over time and we'll need to lead and direct those. But they're not the only priorities that we have. We have to meet performance needs. We have to, for example, generate the value so that we can invest in the strategic steps. So we have to get this, we have a trade-off, we can't escape it. While we're carrying out the maneuvers that our strategy implies, we need to generate value that will pay for us to remain in business. And this generates a tension, a conflict almost, that requires us as a leadership team to balance that and get that right. And it's not easy. So let's dig into Lucy's point that often strategies fail to deliver. 70 to 98% of strategies not being implemented. Well, let's look at that. Let's build on that previous slide and dig into the funding and resource balance. Because here's a little example organisation. It has a board structure which essentially has an operations area, the value generation area, and the transformation and change area. And we're showing how that we have our change portfolio, a transformation portfolio to drive the core aspects, cross-cutting aspects of the strategy. And we have objectives that we've defined programs to achieve. And we're drawing resources and funds from different parts of the business to enable us to meet those objectives. But at the same time, with our business focus and leadership capability and resources and funds, we have to develop new products and we have to exploit those new products. So we can already see we've got a choice to split our efforts between transformation activity and value generation activity. Similarly, we have to create the machine that runs our business, and there'll be objectives and targets that those functional areas have, in addition to the cross-cutting strategic objectives. And again, we need to deploy resource into these areas so we can meet our immediate targets. So it must be pretty obvious that delivering strategy execution in a business where we have multiple choices to make between near-term and long-term goals, it's not easy. In addition to the prioritization and resourcing challenge, we have the potential for disconnection as our strategy is communicated through the business. For example, we may have a board that is very clear on what it would like to achieve, but perhaps is prone to setting objectives that we don't have bandwidth to achieve within the business. So we need to understand what capacity and capability the business has and then prioritize between the change activity and the run activity. Handing that over to our functional areas, we may well get activity that's not necessarily directed at strategy and is more parochially driven. Functional pet projects may start to happen that we don't really want to do. Competition between those and resourcing for strategic initiatives. There are difficulties in communicating the board level intent down to the functional and portfolio heads. We then often face the difficulty to get those strategic intents turned into projects and programs so that change can happen. And magic somehow happens is a term we hear a lot when we can't quite make that connection between strategic intent and changes that would enable that to happen. So we can't see that connection, and perhaps we can never really get transparency as to what progress means to the achievements we need to make to show that we're hitting our strategic objectives. And well, what happens, but perhaps rather than have to tweak and adjust the strategy, we end up finding that we have to completely recreate a new strategy because we've not been able to tweak the one that we have in flight, which clearly is a waste of time and space. So disconnection of understanding of the business through to driving that through the business and understanding what's been accomplished to be able to re-steer, that disconnection is a real pain. Another perspective is that we actually, within our businesses, have competing strategies. Some of them are aligned, maybe some of them aren't. What do we mean by that? Well, if we look at our business at the top level, look at our boards, we understand that they are gathering and dealing with opportunities, threats, imperatives and goals at that corporate level, which allows them to define the strategy, whichever method and approach that they take to do that with, that then finds its way into objectives, targets and challenges to task the business with. And those are, in this model, delegated to the various different senior domains, big department domains, and priorities are made across those as to how funding and leadership time and resources deployed. And picking each of those domains, they'll be looking to delegate and interpret the strategic objectives, targets and challenges into local objectives, targets and challenges, but based on the drivers from the corporate level, but also on the local opportunities, threats, imperatives and goals they face, which will influence their development of a local strategy, which may support the corporate strategy, but will also accommodate their local needs. And they'll be then able to cascade that down to management teams and so on and so forth. So we need to be quite clear that the strategies, whether they're developed top down as implied here, or whether they're developed a little bit bottom up as well, do all these strategies align? How clear are we that the objectives, targets and challenges that everyone has connect up and are heading in the same direction and are not in conflict? And it's easy to fail to coordinate local and corporate strategies for practical as well as different prioritization reasons.